Okay, hello. So the last video that we did, we talked about the benefits of actually learning APIs, and Postman was the service that we used to learn APIs, and I just dropped the link to APIs. So now, we're going to see how we can use this whole knowledge from Postman to deploy applications on okay, to deploy like applications or services on Azure. So we're going to pick like a VM. We're going to use Postman REST API to deploy a VM in Azure. Okay. So there's a prerequisite for this. You need to have an understanding on how Azure REST API work, and there's a documentation for that. It's called the Azure REST API reference, right? So I'm going to drop this link, the link to this article in the comments. So it's called Azure REST API reference. So if you go through this, let's say you don't have experience with working with REST APIs on Azure, you need to understand, you just need to go through this to really understand what to do. Okay. So this shows you the different how the different method work in terms of the header, your request header, your request body, what has to go in there, and how to register your client application with Microsoft Entra ID. And yeah, how to generate the access token, how to create the how to acquire an access token and all of that, and to understand your your authorization code grants for inactive app. So you just need to go through this, right? And most importantly, again, you need to also go through this documentation here, right? There's another documentation. So they're all linked together for so they just give you an understanding. So the Microsoft Identity Platform and OAuth 2.0 authorization code flow. Yeah, if you understand the code flow, we're good to go, right? So with this being said, you can just review this if you really want to do this yourself. So with this being said, we are going to move over to Azure. Now, Postman is acting as a third-party application. So since it's a third-party application, it means it has no native integration or no native access to Azure. So we're going to set that up. So the way we do that, um, the knowledge you get from this documentation, you know that you need to create uh, an app with client application and then register the client application in Azure, right? So um, that is the first step. So that is what we're going to do. First of all, going to register a client application. And when we register the client application, we need to set it up for it to be able to generate secrets and then have some permissions, rights based on the tenants and also under the subscription. All right, let's move over to Azure. Okay, so I'm going to go over to Azure. So this is my Azure Portal. And where I'm going to go, I'm going to move over to Entra ID. So I'll click on the hamburger menu there and then move over to Entra ID. So Entra ID was previously Azure Active Directory, although that documentation has not been updated, but I just need to point it out that Azure AD is now Microsoft Entra ID. I mean, there's a couple of years that's been branded, but just need to point it out. So I'm just going to click here. And what I'm going to do right now is move over to the application registration, app registration. So we're going to create a new application, right? So we have a lot of application here, but we're just going to create a new one. I'm going to call this Postman. So because we want to deploy an application using Postman, which is a third-party application, right? So we're going to do that. So if you look at what we selected here, it's called this Postman app, which is a third-party application, right? Can use the APIs to access. just this single directory, right? Which is the default directory that I'm currently on right now. So even though I have a multi-directory in this tenant, this application can only access a single tenant, right? This default directory fully. So that is exactly what we want. Okay, so I'll just go ahead to click on register. So when I do that, it creates more like a container that represents an application, but doesn't have any permission here. It doesn't have any secret, doesn't have anything, just a simple container, right? So what I'm going to do right now is to create a secret for it. So the secret will help it to present a claim to say, okay, this is who I am. Please, Azure, can you help me give me a token that can use to authorize to get access to something? All right. So there are two ways you could go about that. You could click on add a certificate or a secret, or you just come over here and click on certificates and secrets. So I'm gonna do that and click on certificate and secrets. Okay. So now, I mean, you can read through all the details here, so you get more understanding of what this actually is. So, what we're gonna do next is you just click on New Client Secrets. Okay, so the new client secrets for this app, I'm just gonna call this Postman Secrets, right? Awesome. So this is really descriptive to let you know that this is a secret for Postman, and you can decide to put it in the warrants, right? So because this is just a demo application, I'm just going to put 90 days. I'm going to delete this when we're done. So I'm just going to put 90 days there, and then I click hard, right? Awesome. So whenever you generate the secrets, it is advisable, highly recommended, mandatory that you copy that secret ID, the value for that secret, and then keep it because you might not be able to see it again. So I'm just going to copy the secret value. Awesome. I'll open up a notepad and I paste it on my notepad. Okay. And you can do the same as well. So I'm just going to put my secret value in a notepad so I can retrieve it later on. Awesome. So we're going to proceed to something really interesting. I'm going to get the application ID. Okay. So copy the application ID and then keep it somewhere as well. So I'll do that. I'll put this in my notepad. Awesome. So now that we already created this Postman app and we created a secret for it, the next thing we're going to do is to give it an API permission. Okay. So I'm going to go over to API permissions here, just on that token configuration. So I'll click that. Yeah, it's going to take some time to load those. And now what we can see that currently we have just read access for the Microsoft Graph. Okay. And so I'm going to add another permission to it. So I'm just going to click on the permission. And then I want to let this application, this Postman app, have access to Azure Service Management. Okay. So I'm going to click this. Okay. Now you can see the Azure Service Management has this endpoint. So we're going to take this endpoint, which is very, very important. This is what we want to have access to in order for us to be able to deploy um, the service that we want to deploy. So I'm going to copy this, and you can copy that and keep it somewhere. You can call that, so because that's what we're going to be sending. We're going to be use that as a resource, right, or a scope, depending on the version of the API that we're using. Okay, so now we're just going to go over to select the permissions, right? So what we need is called user impersonation, okay? And you can see that right here. So I'm just going to click on that. So what this user impersonation means is that this application, once we give this application this permission, is going to hard as a user to access the Azure Resource Manager in order for it to deploy a service. Okay, so I'm going to do that and then I click on add permissions. Awesome. So the next thing we're going to do right now is to grant consent, grant admin consent. So once the admin grants you consent in the tenant, it means that you'll be able to carry out certain permission. on that tenant, even though you had it as an application. Okay. Now I'm just going to click on this and then say grant admin consent. Okay. So I'm just going to do this and say, yep. So awesome. That has been granted already. Okay. So I'm going to close this out. And then, so after creating this, we are 95 or 98% done with setting up permissions for the application. But the most important thing is to understand the way Azure works. So Azure works in a way that there's an hierarchy to the way, um, to the flow of your API calls. So you already have access in the tenant, but then you also need to have access to the subscription. So all the applications you're going to be deploying are tied to particular subscription, right? So currently we have no access for any subscription at all. So what I'm going to do is to head over to my subscription and then assign an Azure callback role to this application. All right, let's go. So I'm going to click home right now, and then I'll go over to my subscription. Okay, so when I go over to my subscription, I'm going to click into my subscription. All right, and I'm just going to wait for it to finish loading. Then take the hint. So I'll go to access control. So access control is for your identity access management. So I'm going to wait for it to, okay, now it just finished loading. I'm going to click on add and then add role assignment. So it means I want to assign a role to my application right now. So I'm just going to click on privilege administrator controls and click on contributor and click on next. So what I'm going to do, because I want this application to have access to add as a user, so it's more like I'm creating a service principal for the application. So I'm just going to select on that user group from service principal, and then I'm just going to click on select member. And I'm just going to select my Postman, mid-letter Postman here is going to pop up Postman. All right, so this is Postman here, and I'm going to click on select. All right, so I'm going to give it something more descriptive. I'll just say it contributor, um, role to manage Azure resources. Okay, awesome. So I'm just going to click this review and assign. Awesome, review and assign. So with this, we are done setting up all the credentials needed by our application. So one more thing that we need to do is to go over to the subscription overview and then get the value, get your subscription ID, copy it and paste it in your notepad because you'll be needing all of this information later on when we go over to Postman. Okay, so I'll go over to Intra ID again. I'll go over to Intra ID and then I will get my tenant ID. So I'm gonna copy my tenant ID, okay? And then I'm gonna paste that somewhere. Okay, so I think we're done. Let me just cross check my uh, let me just cross check my Postman app. Okay, yes, all informations here are well collected. So now we are going to go over to Postman to try to get generated token. That token, we'll use it to authorize into the Azure Resource Manager so we can deploy our VM. So let's move over to Postman. So now we're in Postman. What we're going to do is to first of all create a workspace. And then when we create a workspace, we can create a collection and all. So I'm going to create a workspace and click on create a workspace and blank workspace. So I'm going to click next. I'm going to give this a name. an intuitive name to call it Postman and Azure VM. So I'm just gonna put today's date because I like to remember the day that I did this stuff. August 8th, 2025. Okay. So I'm just gonna click on save. Okay. Um, let me just make put the string up together. Okay. So now I have created a workspace. The next thing I'm going to do now is to create a collection. A collection is just going to has all my environment and all the requests that I'm making. So I'm going to create a blank collection, and I'm going to call this Azure and Postman collection. Okay. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead to start building my requests, my HTTP requests. Okay. So the first request I'm going to do is a post request. Now that post request will allow me to get the access token that I need to authenticate authorize to get the authorization needed to access Azure um resource manager in order for me to deploy the VM. Okay, so I'm going to go and get um I'm going to go into the documentation to look for a particular part where that actually um, describes what I'm looking for. I think, okay, it should be in the other documentation. So it's in this one. Then, yeah, the Microsoft Identity Platform and OAuth 2 authorization code flow. Okay, now this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for um I want to generate a token, so I'm looking for the endpoint for the token, right? So I'm just gonna scroll down. Yeah, so we're close to it. The right. So this is what I'm looking for because request for I want to request an access token with the client secrets. Okay. So I'm going to first of all get the host. So what this means is that I'm trying to log into Microsoft.com online or MicrosoftOnline.com, right? So I'm going to copy this and then try to build my, I'm trying to build my, I'm trying to build my request, right? My HTTP request. So I'm going to go over again. And then this is the post that I want to do. So I'm going to copy this, right? This is the post I want to do. So I need the token. I'm gonna paste this token. So basically, you can see that I need to um, impute my tenant here. So that was the reason why I had access to collect tenants, the tenant ID, the other time when we're in Azure. All right. So now we are good to go. I'm just going to check one more thing. All right. So I think we're good to go. All right, so we need to know what check the content type. So you can see that the content type is actually application, the form URL unencoded. So I'm gonna just go there and set the header to be content type, content type. So it's gonna be your unencoded, right? So that right? Awesome. So I'm gonna just save these. So next thing I'm gonna do is to create an environment. All right. So I'm gonna create an environment so I can pass my variables. Yeah. So I'm gonna create tenant ID. Go call this tenant ID, and I want it to be a secret so it doesn't get exposed. So I'm just gonna copy my tenant ID and paste it in there. Okay. I'm gonna paste it there. All right. So the next thing I want to do again is to include my subscription ID. So my subscription ID. Okay. So I'm also going to make it a secret because I don't want my subscription ID to actually leak, to be out there in the public. So I'm just going to place that there. So the next thing I want to add, the next variable, I want it to be client ID. So the client ID for my application. So I could literally leave this open if I want, and I could also make it I could make it a secret. Not that it's important, but I could just make it a secret, right? So that's the client ID. Just gonna paste it there. So the next thing I'm gonna add is called the client secrets. Okay. So remember where I got the client secret from. Yeah. So the client secret was generated in Azure for the post and app. So this is what we're gonna use to get the request, the access token from Azure when we made the post request. Okay. So I'm gonna copy that and paste that. So of course, it's a secret. Okay. I'm just gonna change this to secrets and then I paste this. Okay. Awesome. So I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna save this now. So for now, these are the values that we might be needing to get the access token. Okay. So I'm just gonna go back here and add a couple of stuff. I think what we need here is grant type. So the grant type is that I'm going to use credentials. I'm going to use credentials, client credentials for the app credentials. Okay. Then I'm going to add scope to it. And I need that scope to be, so if you go to the scopes and permission, you see that so you have scope equals to source identifier slash default. Okay. So sometimes you might have issues with this, but you can switch to version 1. So um, now this resource identifier, the URL for this is um, is https management.azure.com. Remember when I asked us to collect that information from here? I'm just gonna move over and just show you where we get what to put in there. I'm just gonna click on permission and yep. So this is exactly what we need in that scope, right? So that's where we want the permission to go to. In order for us to be able to have access to the plural one. So I can just call this scope, but it's gonna be on the default lane. Oh, I already have one there. I'm so sorry. Well, I already have one there. So just click on this one. Let me delete these. Don't need that. So I'm just gonna click on this. Then I'll just put a default. Okay. All right. Awesome. So I'm gonna save these. Yeah. So what I'm gonna do next is to bring in the values that I need. So if you look at this right now, it's showing tenants, but not tenant ID. So I'm gonna correct that. What I need is tenant ID. So I'm gonna delete these. Awesome. So the next thing I'm gonna put is my client ID. Um, client ID. So I'm gonna put my client ID over here. I'm gonna call it as I'm gonna call it as a variable. So a client ID. Okay. So the next thing I'm gonna do is to client secrets. I'll call client secrets. So I'll just call it as a variable, client secrets. Awesome. So I'm gonna save this now and see if we're gonna have success. So we're supposed to expect a 200 response from Azure. So let's see if we're gonna get that. Okay. Let's see if we're gonna get a 200 response from Azure. All right. So what happened here? The request body must contain the following grant type. We do have grant type here. Oh, did I save this? I did. So invalid request. The request must contain grant type. Okay. It we have grant type here, client credentials. So let's try to see what is actually wrong with this. So this is how grant type is spelled. So what is happening here? All right. So let me move over to my header and see. All right. So this is correct. This is good. So why are we having errors? All right. Let's see if this is going to be kind of good to us. Okay. So I think that's where we have some issues. So the header parameter. So we're supposed to actually get all of these into the header, right? So let me put this into the header. All right. So what why are we having issues? Why are we having errors here? We don't have the request contain grant type. Oh, okay. So the request body must contain the following parameter grant type. Awesome. So let's go add the request that to the request body. So I'm just gonna say grant type. I think we already had grant type, but just gonna be credential grant client credentials, credentials. Okay. The so it's gonna be client credentials, and so next thing we're gonna do is to try to bring all of those parameters here. So I'm going to take all of these away. These are all parameters that are not supposed to be here. They're supposed to be in the body, right? So I'm going to take all of these away and even delete this one as well and put all of those inside the body actually. So that was something that we could have done more better. So we're going to call this ID and also going to call these clients secret. I don't want to capitalize secret. Okay, so I think that's all we need for now. So I'm just gonna reference these. I'm gonna reference these as client ID, and I'm also gonna reference these as client secret. And I'm gonna set the scope where it's gonna access. So I'm gonna paste these the dot default. Okay, so I'm gonna save this right now and see how it goes. So the request body must contain client underscore ID. All right, client underscore ID. Let's see if why this is not client underscore ID. All right, so I hope this works. Maybe it's a naming convention, but I'm just going to try it again. Awesome. So it was a naming convention. I was using client ID, and so awesome. So we've gotten what we wanted. Is called this is the 200 um response that we needed. So the most important thing you can see here is that these 200 requests actually came back with a bearer token, right? So you can see this is a bearer, and this is the token, the access token that we're looking for. So with this access token, we can easily authenticate into Azure. So I'm going to copy this right now and go over to like collection and then go into parts and look for yeah token. Just gonna put that here. So what I want to do is to create a variable for it. So I'm going to my environment and just put a good name for the environment, say Azure and Postman env. All right. So I'm going to create, oh, I'm not saving nothing. So I'm going to create a new um, variable called bearer underscore token. Okay, so I'm going to pass that into um, my authorization. So I'm going to paste this here and then paste this. Okay. So I'm saving this right now. So I'll be able to pull it from here and I'm going to check for bearer token. So clicking bearer token. Awesome. So I'm saving this right now. So every time that I run, either a post, either it gets a, um, a delete operation, this is what I'm going to use to um, automatically authenticating and access, have the authorization to Azure Resource Manager to do whatever operations that I want to carry on as the subscription will allow me to. Okay, so now I'm going to do something else again, which is the main thing we want to do, which is to deploy the VM. So to deploy the VM, we need to use a put operation and we need to reference the documentation for that. So I'm going to first of all open a new request and I'm going to change this to a put request, right? So a put request is helps you to create or update resources in Azure or any other platform as well. So now this documentation is a very amazing documentation. So it shows you how you can use the resource manager to leverage APIs to create or update virtual machines, right? VMs. Okay, and you can see that the method, the HTTP method is a put request, and this is where we are actually testing. So I'm gonna copy this, right? I'm gonna copy it and then go over to our request, then I paste this here. Awesome. And I remove the put, don't need that. Okay, so because I already have the put here. Now we have a couple of things that we need to provide. The subscription ID, the resource group name, and the name of the VM we want to deploy. So I'm going to set all of those as a variable. Okay. So I'll go over to my environment. I might just copy. I think I already have this, so I'll just paste it here and then delete the rest ones. Delete these. Okay. Now for the resource group, I'm just going to copy this and give it a name. I'll use it as a variable. So, and also the VM name, I'm going to copy that and also use it as a variable. Okay. So I'll go over to my environment. I'll paste this, the VM name, and I'll paste this, the resource group. All right. So to make it easy, I'm just going to go over to Azure and pick a resource group that I want to deploy this VM into. So I'm going to move over to Azure, go to my home directory, and then I'll just go to resource group. Let me type resource group. Awesome. The resource groups, and I have a couple of resource groups here. So I want to use this Azure VM. So this is where I normally deploy most of my VMs in, right? My standalone VMs. Awesome. So these are all the VMs that I have. These are all the resources that I have here. If I just want to check for VMs, so just go and check for VMs. I have 3 VMs. Just apply. And right now, these are all the VMs we have. We don't have any other VM apart from these 3 VMs. So when we're done creating it, we have 4 VMs. And one thing to note is the location. So we have this resource group deployed in US West 2. And yeah, so the name of the VM is Azure VM. So I'm going to copy this name. Okay. Then I'm just going to put it inside. So the name of the resource group, sorry, the name of this resource group is actually Azure VM resource group. All right, so I'm just gonna go here and then paste it into here. So That is the name of the resource group and the name of the VM. So the name of the VM can be anything. So I just want to make it Postman. I want to call it Postman API VM. Okay. So that's the name. It's a funny name, but it's okay. It's all good. I'm just going to save it. Okay. So when I go over to my put requests, I'm going to form it very well so I don't have errors. I'm just going to, you know, resource group. Awesome. So I'll delete the rest to make it well formed. Then VM name. Okay. So I'm just going to go, yes. So I'll save this. Now, this is just to have an access to the endpoint where you need to create your VM, but you need to send a JSON body. The JSON body tells the endpoint to create or delete or do whatever, right? So if you're going to create a resource, the JSON body has to carry the property, the description of that resource, right? So we're going to go into the body and then click raw because we want to pass in a JSON body. Okay. So now from this documentation, you can decide to just go over to the one that you want. So for me, what I want is to create a Windows VM. Okay. So to create a Windows VM, okay. So you can copy this, right? And then modify it to suit your needs, right? Modify it to suit your needs, and then um so if you look at this, let me just go through. So if you look at this JSON body, this JSON is talking about the location. So this is going to be in West 2. You can put it in any US West. You can put it in any location you want. So the properties like this is the hardware profile, the VM size. This is the size of the VM, and then the storage profile. Talk about the OS, the name. It's going to be this name, the image. So this is when you're using your own custom image, right? Is going to be stored in a container in an Azure storage, right? Storage account. And this is the OS type, the operating system type, which is Windows. And from this image, so the same, your VHD, the virtual hard disk. So you have it stored in an existing Azure storage account as well. So basically, you just go for the OS profile, you put your computer name and username and user password, and you also ensure you have an existing NIC, right? The network interface that this VM is going to be attached to in order for it to assign the private or public IP address to it, okay? Now, you can just go ahead to copy that and modify. I already have mine modified, and I'm going to paste it in there, okay? I'm going to paste mine in there so I don't spend too many time trying to modify all of that anymore. Okay, so I'm just going to paste it here and walk through. All right, so when we come over here, so this is not needed because I already have it configured at the top. So I'm going to delete this and awesome, awesome. So I'm deploying to US West 2 and this is the profile of the hardware and every other thing remains the same. But the only difference is that I'm just using the Windows Microsoft server glitcher. So this is the image I'm going to be using. So the offer is going to be Windows Server, and this queue is 2019 data center, and I'm using the latest version. All right, so I'm going to bring this downward a little bit so we can have more states to review this. So now my operating system disk is called VMOS disk. I can just leave this as Postman disk, right? So that it is more intuitive to know that Postman actually created this Postman disk, okay? And yeah, so the name of this computer is going to be, the name of the VM is going to be Postman Azure VM. So I can even call this I think this is okay. This is fine. It's explanatory enough to let you know that Postman was used to create it. And then username and password. So I'm going to set new variables for the username and the password as well. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my collection, to my environment. Then I'm going to copy this, right? Copy and copy. So I want to create new variables, right? So we have a lot of variables already. So I'm going to paste this one as well. Mm, Okay, I'm just going to copy this one. Going to delete it. The the password. All right. So my main password, my username is going to be the username is going to be Postman user, right? So that's the name. It's going to be Postman user. Then my password, I'm going to delete this. I don't want you to know my password. So I'm just going to delete this and set it to secrets. Okay. I'm just going to post, just going to give it a password name. Let me look for a good name. Let me call this. Okay. So let me type it again. Okay. So this is my um this is oh, I think I also need one more variable. So if we go into if we go into the network interfaces, you can see that I need one more variable. I already set this, so I'm going to copy this called network interface. So this, I'm going to go into the environment again, then paste this here so I can, no, come on. I just need these. Why did you copy all of that? So I'm going to paste this. All right. I don't need entry. So now this is something that is very important because you need to have the network interface card already created, already existing before you can create the VM. Okay, so it's more like it depends on you have the VM creation depending on the NIC creations. So the NIC has to already exist before the VM gets created so that it can be attached to it. So what we do right now is to head over to Azure and then create a new NIC, right? So the NIC is the network interface card. So I'm just gonna go to just look for network interface. Okay, network interfaces. So I'm gonna click on that and create a new one. So I'm gonna create a new one. So I'm gonna put this inside my um my Azure VM and I'm gonna call it Postman NIC. That's my nick. Then I'm going to use, I already have an existing virtual network. So I'm going to just place it inside that existing virtual network and choose a subnet, default subnet. So we'll have a lot of IP addresses available in that subnet. Then I'm also going to use a private IP because it's dynamic. So static IP, you have to pay for those. Public IP address, which are static, I don't do that. So I'm going to go ahead to create right now. So just create it. And so once I create this, I am going to reference it using the dynamic variables. Okay. So it's currently running validation and it passed. So I'm going to click on create. So once that creates, So it's initializing the deployments. When we're done with initializing the deployments, we're going to now it's submitting the deployment. So it's going to take a couple of seconds. Upon submission, it's free. Create it. It's just to make it doesn't take a lot of time, right? Awesome. So deployment is in progress and very soon will be done. Now your deployment is complete. So I'm going to go to the resources and then pick the name of the deployment. So the name of the deployment is Postman, right? We already know that. We just want to be sure. So this is the IP address. 10.0.0.6 is a private IP address. So we're just going to go back to and then paste this here. Okay, so I'm going to save this. So we are fully formed our JSON body. You can see everything. There's no error right now. Everything looks good. Now, what we confirm that everything looks good is when we send it out and see. Now let's go confirm again. When we go into this Azure VM resource group, we don't have we don't have any um we don't have any VM here. So I'm just gonna filter with VM only. So everything equals to VM. So I want us to see the process of the creation. So I'm just gonna pull this out. I'm gonna pull this out, right? And try to see if we can do a double look when we try to build these or we try to create this, okay? So I'll take this down a little bit more and so what I'm trying to do here is just to see if we can see when um this is created, right? This has been created. So I'm going to click on, not sure if that's going to work, but I'm just going to click on this and let's see what we have. Now, authentication fade. Why does our authentication fade? So that's what we got. Authentication fades. The other, okay. So let's go check our authorization. So we have an authorization. I'm going to click on the bear token and then reference at dynamic variables, bear token, and I'm going to save these. Then, yep, this is what I want. All right, so that was fix the authorization problem, right? To say the authentication fee. All right, so authorization is missing, so that would fix it. So now I'm going to click on, let me just go to my JSON body again, and I'm going to click on send again. Let's see what happens here. Awesome. So we have a 201 created. Now let me pick, oh my God. Let me see if I can pick the VM creation and quickly run to and refresh and see what we'll have here. All right, so you can see we've been able to create this VM. So I'm going to click into it and you can see what we have. Awesome. So the this is currently running. It's currently running, and you can see that the IP address is the same that we got from that nick that we created, right? And is also a Windows, right? Is a Windows operating system, and this is the same um, OS size that we used. Okay, so we can see it's also deployed to WestOS 2, right? So we can see that we have succeeded in creating our VM, and this is Windows Server. Awesome. And this is the name of the OS sticks. So what this shows you is that we have succeeded in creating, deploying a VM using Postman in the awesome. So using Postman, right? So we can just go back and just see. Now, you see, this is what it returned to us. This is the size, right? And this is the data center, all of this stuff, right? Yep. So we have succeeded in creating that. Awesome. So the next thing we're going to do is to delete it. Yeah, I know it's funny, but we just succeeded in creating it, so we just want to go ahead to delete it. So the whole idea is to show you that you can use Postman to do, instead of coming over to the portal to click, do some ClickUps, you can just use Postman to create all of these easily. Yeah, so you can just come over here and open up a new, um, you can open up a new request, and you're gonna call this new request the delete request, right? So what you can just do is copy, um, you can copy, so you can copy this, you can copy all of these, right, into that request, right? So you copy it into the request, and you go to your authorize. So you could just do the same thing, bear token, then your body, you do the same thing. So it's basically just repeating the same thing. So why the reason I'm showing you is because it, you know, it doesn't really make more sense creating a new one. It's just gonna You're just gonna be stressing yourself. So what you can just do is to delete that and come over here. So this already is a push request. So what this does is that it's either creates or updates. Now we're gonna change it to a delete so that we don't have this VM here anymore, right? So we delete it. So I'm just gonna move there and say delete, right? And then I'm gonna send that request with this whole body and all this, right? So it's gonna go there and yeah, so it's accepted, right? So it means the request has been received but has not yet been acted upon. So it's gonna take some time. So it's a asynchronous action. So it's going to take some time. So, but while we're waiting, I'm just going to refresh and see if we have any action. All right, so you can see that this guy is already been deleted. It cannot be found anymore because we deleted it. So if I go over to my resource group and refresh, I refresh, I cannot find it anymore. So it's as simple and as amazing that I can come over here back and say, oh, I don't want to delete that. I want to create it again. And I can just click here and let's just wait and see. Oh, it's going to tell me that there's a conflict. So the reason why there's a conflict is because of the fact that whenever you delete a VM, um, you have to delete the disks, right? So if I don't want to delete, you have to delete the disks before you can create a new VM. So I'm gonna go and look for that disk, and you know, I'm gonna take this away, and so I can delete the disks and create a new one. So I'm just gonna go look for that disk. So this disk needs to go, so I can create a new one, or I can just change the name if I want. But I'm just gonna delete the disk. Okay. To show you how easy it is that you can just on the click of a button, you can create a new resource. You can deploy a new resource in Azure when you have your API set up already. All right. All right. So let me just refresh and see if the disk is still available. So the disk is currently being deleted, so it will take some time to delete. Okay. Now I've successfully deleted the disk, so I'm going to refresh. Okay. So let me just refresh the browser so it gets full refreshed, and we can see that we no longer have the disk. So the disk is no longer available, right? So we can now go ahead to just with a click of a button, just click the button and let's see what we have here. Um, so it's going to take a little bit of time, but the point is that you're just going to click just the button and be able to deploy. So let's just hold up. Oh, Podman Dix. Oh, I'm supposed to delete this Podman Dix. So sorry. This is what I'm supposed to delete. Postman Dix, right? I'm just gonna click on delete there. I want to delete some other Dix. So that's why I was still getting conflicts. So this is what I was supposed to delete. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So the video is getting a little bit longer, but the point is that we've been able to set the Postman API and JSON body for deploying the VM. You can do that with different resources like databases, like Azure Kubernetes Services. You can do that with keyboards, storage accounts, and what have you, right? So let's just go over it. Now we can see that has already been deleted. Let's go see the Podman. So I'm just going to send this again and let's see. Fact that I'm no longer writing anything. So I've just come here and then click. Now you can see it has been created. Awesome. And we can come over here and then refresh again to see if we have our Postman um, VM already. So we need the VM. We have 4 VMs already. Awesome. So it's so fast, right? It's so fast. So we have, yeah, you see? So this is the way that you can use Postman to deploy a VM on Azure. All right, so I'm just going to leave the link for you to read some of the important thing when you want to work with Azure REST API. And yeah, so have a wonderful day. Thank you for your time. Until next time, bye.